Kia ora everybody, my name's Trevor Faville and I am from a music making experience, or a band if you like, from New Zealand called Date Month Year. And we've been making music for some time now, and it's my pleasure to be talking to you all this morning.
And you're actually neighbors with somebody I interviewed, I
Yeah.
think late last year.
Yep.
And what city is that again?
It's Hamilton, New Zealand. So it's in the
Okay.
middle of the North Island of New Zealand.
Okay. Because there are, what is it, two main islands, and then there's a smaller island.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah,
so
there's North Island, South Island, and Stewart Island.
Stewart Island. Okay. And
Yeah.
so where is New Zealand at now as far as with, I mean, I take it the government's probably helping administer vaccines and so forth.
Yeah, it's not going as fast as in other countries, but then the need wasn't quite so great. So what they're doing at the moment is they've been doing the vaccines for essential workers. So that's all the people basically on the front lines. And they have, I believe, all the vaccines up ready to go. And I think the rest of the country it's all going to happen for us, I think in June or July, something like that.
Yeah, in your country, it seems like people took it seriously,
Yeah.
whereas my country, we had a lot of people bringing rifles to their state capitals to protest the
I've been
government.
watching.
Yeah, you didn't have that kind of thing in New Zealand, I take it.
And we did, but nothing like you know, the gun culture here is entirely different.
Yeah.
So we certainly didn't have anything like that, because people here don't walk around. There's no open carry, for
Yeah.
example. No one does that here.
Do
And
people? I mean, I take it hunting is probably still part of the culture there in New Zealand.
Oh yeah, yep. Hunting and the hunting's big, and well, it's a bit of a cliche to call it that way, but the New Zealand I grew up in, say 30, 40 years back, was a farming-based culture, and there is almost always guns on a farm, for reasons, like you need them to kill things, basically. So, so when you got a gun in New Zealand, that normally means you're going to do business. So that's why it's a little bit freaky when you see people walking around in an open carry situation, because culturally it's just like, what's going on,
Yeah. I some of the stuff you'll see in the United States is kind of crazy. I mean, even if you were, into the whole open carry kind of thing, you'd think you would walk around with the rifle pointed upwards, and sometimes
Yep.
you'll see people walking around with the rifles pointed downwards. Same thing with police. I mean, if you go to Washington, D.C., even 10, 15 years ago, you would see cops walking around with these large various rifles pointed down. And but anyway, that aside, tell us about your band, what kind of a genre of music it is.
Well, the genre one's always the interesting question. It's this huge range, really. We sort of invented a phrase to cover it, which was cinematic rock. But it goes as far as quite melodic stuff, and then it goes right over into quite heavily experimental electronic stuff. And cinematic's the best way I can think of to describe it, simply because there's a lot of visual storytelling and a lot of lyrical storytelling, and there's a bit of drama in there. And rock music, when I say rock music, it's because I'm old. The kind of rock music I'm talking about is your Talking Heads, or your David Bowie, or your Robert Fripp, or your Brian Eno, these people who had really expansive music vision and just encompassed all of it. And calling it rock doesn't help in the modern era, because it gets categorized a certain way. But yes, maybe cinematic indie rock is probably the best way of describing it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I love the fact you mentioned Brian Eno. That's he is not as well known as he should be. And it's crazy because the guy's got what, 30, 40 million albums. I mean, it seems like he was making an album every single year. And
everyone's a template. If you go and listen to it, it's all a template for stuff. You go and listen, and they're packed full of ideas, just full of them.
Yeah, I mean, and he was so all over the place as far as you have an ambient album, you could have a
Yep.
more rocky album, a more poppy album, and just all over the place.
Yeah.
And I've been checking out your music, and it's awesome stuff. I mean, I think one band that I kind of thought of that, uh, I thought maybe is in a similar genre of some way was the Pixies. I think some of
Right.
yeah. I'm a huge fan of that. Um, and yeah, and so we'll be playing that your music all through the radio segment.
Cool.
How long ago did you all form the band?
A long time back. It's, as far as the old memory is a bit hazy, but it's around about 03, 04, something like that.
Okay.
And it's been a flexible lineup, which sounds a bit pretentious to say flexible lineup, but there's been lots of changes over the years.
Yeah.
And the current sort of incarnations, I think we've been working together for about 5 years now.
Yep. I guess, as I've been doing these interviews with various musicians in New Zealand for the last few
Mm.
months, and I'm just amazed by the fact that you're still able to have large shows. I mean, and maybe, it
Yeah.
might be smaller, but even
Yep.
just being able to have shows with a few hundred people or having an outdoor venue where there's 1,000 people.
Yep.
And we're nothing like that in most of the states right now in the United
This,
States.
yeah, this summer in particular, without wanting to sound like bragging or anything, but this summer in particular has been one of the best live music summers we've had in a very, very long time. And so much so that I think 2 weekends back there was a local band, and I shouldn't be promoting them because I'm not a massive fan, but they did a nationwide tour, and their last gig was 60,000 people in Auckland, and and that hasn't been done before in New Zealand, and so they've, much as like I say, I'm not really a fan. You can't deny what they've done, and that's a lot. And 60 grand is a big audience.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be even a large audience for here in the United
Yeah.
States, and I'm amazed by, you look at the music in New Zealand. It seems like you can find almost any genre. I mean, you can see the electronic music, you can see these guys playing heavy metal.
Yep.
There's so much different types of music. I know I've been done a couple videos now with a guy named Manu Francois, and it was interesting. Like he started playing more like thrasher metal music, and then he's doing more hip hop and
Mm.
reggae, and that's a Cavalier. If I don't know if you can hear that, there's a
Yeah.
Cavalier going nuts at what's ever walking by the house right now. But 1 second.
No worries.
I'm building a new studio in my garage. So as soon as that's
He's just saying hi to someone.
yeah. And so and I take it like, how do I say this? But if people in New Zealand, is the face masks a thing there, or is it just like,
Yep.
okay, people are doing that? I mean, here it's
They were.
okay. I mean, here
it's not a thing much now.
yeah, I mean, here in the United States, it's either some states are, mandate it, other states don't. And even though I live in a state that mandates it, there's still people who massively ignore it, and we're ignoring it the entire time.
Yep.
Even when the numbers were much worse, and things are starting to calm down here. But I think in part it has to do with the fact that we have a new president in the United States who takes it more seriously than the old president.
Indeed. I'm just trying to remember when the whole thing first happened. So sort of February, March last year, quite a few of us just automatically went out and bought masks. I did. Not because it was any law, and people weren't even talking about it so much, but we all bought for the family because it's complicated. But we were going out to the supermarkets and stuff to get food and all that, and lots of us were thinking, well, geez, these people have to work, and here we are coming in, and I thought the very least I could do personally as a gesture of look after you, bro, is to wear a mask when I went out.
Yeah.
Just, and it wasn't so much about protecting anybody or doing anything. For me, it was more about just telling the people who were stuck at work serving me that I was sort of on their side. It was just a message, I thought, of, I don't know, good manners, even just saying, hey, look, I'm considering you because I could be infectious, and I'd feel really bad if I was going around infecting people. So lots of us are doing that basically out of, I keep using the word good manners, but it just seemed logical to me, because these people had to work and the rest of us were all at home, in theory, safe. And I didn't feel particularly good about that, so I was always wearing a mask when I went out at that point.
Yeah, when this first started, I was actually working in basically hotel management,
Right.
and in the hotel in particular that I was working at was a hotel that was very close to a medical facility that would train people, and so they would constantly be having people from around the country and sometimes Canada coming into
Yep.
the hotel, and so this was like February, and I was kind of very cautious, like, oh my gosh, like if this really hits the United States, I'm going to be in a bad position. And then I get the
Yeah.
call like, yeah, the hotel's going to be shut down for several months, and you're laid off. And it was like, and just the whole way everything worked here in the United States. Well, you're unemployed, but you can get basically unemployment to stay home and
Mm.
everything. But then the whole system of unemployment was
Swamped.
massively, yeah, swamped.
Yeah.
So where for some people they didn't get any money for the first 6 months. Some people got it within weeks,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was just all over the board where it was insane. And then you could get like state unemployment and federal unemployment, and for some people who weren't even working before it happened, they were all of a sudden getting $900 a week, where just
Right.
because it was so up and
Messed up.
down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you guys actually did a performance. I'm assuming it was in New Zealand, but there was like a TED talk or a TED
Yeah.
event.
TED. It was a couple of years ago. TEDx, which is, I think it's a TED talk kind of variant, I believe. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's officially licensed. Yeah, but we did a acoustic version of some of our stuff. Yeah.
And then
And
what would you say were some different like I mean, you've been on TV there in New Zealand, and what kind of like video stuff have you guys done?
well, when we do music videos, and this is the part where I recommend our YouTube channel. Go and watch. We got approached, like I approached them. We approached them, sorry, as events rather than just promotional activities. So the music videos are always little kind of movies. So we do a lot of that. And so every YouTube video, like we don't, I'll give you an example. We don't tend to do the kind of music videos where the band's miming and it's on stage and all that sort of stuff. I find that's okay when it's live. When it's actually live, cool. I love that. But in terms of music video, I always think it's wasting an opportunity. So the stuff we do is always visually, we take time on that. But the other part of what you're mentioning is that a lot of our music has been licensed to, sync licensed to TVs and movies around the world. And I used to keep track of it, but I can't now, because of various companies. I think the company we were using, which was based in New York, got bought out by Getty.
Huh.
And the amount of money we started to get, of course, dropped sharply but as soon as they took over. But also they stopped publishing lists of where and when the stuff was being licensed where and to. So, it was like the Discovery Channel and the A&E Network and the History Channel and all these places through the States and through South America and England and stuff. But now I've got no idea. So it could be anywhere. I'm sort of, I doubt this would happen, but I was laughing at, well, not laughing, I was a bit worried at some of the bands hearing their music played at certain rallies in the States last year. And I remember thinking how awful it would be if that was me, if that was the first time you heard it. Be just like, oh, goodness, I don't want that association.
The strangest. I mean, it's there is just like a collection of music you'll hear at. I mean, I used to film a lot of these Democratic Party events, like John
Yeah.
Kerry when he ran for president and things like that. And it seemed like wherever I went, they would play Journey, Don't Stop Believin',
Yeah.
and some Bruce. There'd always be some Bruce Springsteen or
Yeah. Yeah.
Bon Jovi. And then when Trump ran for president, or when he was president, in the last few years he was president, he started doing these rallies where he would, and even just after he left office and he was doing the CPAC convention, he has been playing YMCA at all of the
Yeah.
ending, which is just the strangest
I've,
thing, because it's a song about men in the
yep.
gay men in the 70s going to the YMCA and meeting other men.
Correct. Yep.
And the funny thing about it was, I guess this comes back to the fact that there are these video memes where they would put like Trump's face over other people's faces and things like that. So there was a mega YMCA one, but it's still very strange that the guy was so associated to memes that like he was a meme, basically a walking talking meme in every way. But
Yeah.
yeah, just the way that the rallies. And I remember, when Barack Obama ran and I went to one of his events, and it was,
Right.
pop song after pop song. Before I get to some other questions, for people listening, what would be the YouTube, the Twitter, and website, so forth, that people can find the work at?
Right. So at the moment, I'm strongly recommending the YouTube site. So that's just if you go to YouTube and do the date, month, year search, it's one word, date, month, year. It's there. And we focus on socials. We do Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'll try and focus on the socials channels that actually work the best, so we're not on every single platform, but so IG, Facebook, and Spotify. And I would recommend to everyone just drop in and say hi, because I monitor them quite closely. And we do all the streaming. So we do the Spotify and the Apple Music, and we've got like 5 albums worth of stuff, and most of it's available on the streaming platforms. And I think that's and we do a Bandcamp. We've just relaunched our Bandcamp store, and that's going to be the place if people are liking what they hear of us. I strongly recommend following us on there, because a lot of the stuff we will be offering will be exclusively on Bandcamp from now on. Yeah.
And quick question. So, growing up, what was like your first, I'm assuming you were into vinyl. What would be like your first record, or what were the bands when you were young you really got into?
Wow. When the first, it was a big deal when I was a kid to go to Australia, which is next door to New Zealand. And we went next door to Australia, and I bought 3 albums, and one was on vinyl, of course, and one was by a band called The Flowers, who became a band called Icehouse, which I don't know if they made it big in the States. They might have. And another band was a band called Ultravox. They're famous for this song called Vienna, which was huge. And the other album was by Dire Straits, believe it or not. And that was Making Movies. And those are my first 3 vinyl albums. And now that I'm sitting here talking to you, that kind of covers just about all of the musical influences in a lot of ways. I hadn't really thought about it before, but yeah, those are my first 3, and I just loved it. I just absolutely loved, and I'm one of these people then and now. I listen to music constantly, so I would listen to these albums hours, and then hours and hours and hours, and then I just go and buy more and more, and just listen to them endlessly, and I still do.
All right, so a couple questions real quick about New Zealand. So
Sure.
I take it now, people in New Zealand, they often refer to other people in New Zealand as Kiwis,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Kiwis. And then I always think it's funny. We use the term keen here in the United States, but I often hear people in New Zealand say, "Oh, keen as,"
Yeah. Keen as, bro.
Keen as, bro.
That's it.
Yeah, if you go into like northern Wisconsin, we have what we call Yoopers, which means like people who are near upper Michigan. So they might say something like, "Oh, deer season is coming up soon," or they kind of have this. They say, "Oh yeah, there," or "Oh yeah, dairy," It's a pretty common phrase. What is as far as like the food and culture of New Zealand? Like, what's a food that's famous to New Zealand?
Oh my goodness. Okay, the pie. The pie in New Zealand. Now, I've spent some time in the States and Europe, so I used to live there. So that's a real cultural clash. A pie in New Zealand is a hot, meat-filled pastry package, not a dessert.
Yes.
And so you would go to the dairy, which is the local 7-Eleven equivalent, for a pie. And that's a heavily, perhaps not so much now, but that's a real New Zealand thing, the pie. So your flavors of pie would be, standard would be mince or steak, or in the 21st century, the big pie flavor, believe it or not, is butter chicken. Butter chicken pie is just, it's outrageously good. And it's always a strange thing because it's not a dessert here. It's a main meal, if you like.
We have something in Madison that sounds like something very similar to that, but they call it a the place is called Teddy Wedgers, and the owner, he refers to them as pasties, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Similar.
Yeah,
it's similar, but not quite, but similar. Yeah.
I look at these like images of New Zealand, and it looks like every image looks like there's a mountain and there's the ocean, and it looks beautiful. I mean, of course, everybody in the world, I'm sure, knows that Lord of the Rings was filmed there. But what are some of the major attractions when people come to New Zealand?
Well, one of the big, where I live in Hamilton, which is right in the middle of the North Island. And as far as New Zealand's concerned, Hamilton's a very poor cousin. And it's very much always gets a hard time. But where I live right now, for example, if I was staying in Hamilton right now, I could drive to the beach is an hour either way. So I could go left or right, basically. And there's two completely different, outrageously good beaches or coastlines. I could go north, and within an hour, I'm in Auckland, which is massive for New Zealand City. And I could go an hour south from where I am right now, and be skiing. So that's one of the most amazing things about where I live is that, I could get in the car and all these places, skiing, surfing, high culture, if you like, it's all within 2 hours. And
you could go skiing and surfing in the same day.
You actually could. Yep.
Wow.
from where I live, other people, other places. If you live in Wellington, it's a bit more of a challenge, and if you live in Auckland, it's a bit more of a challenge too. But from Hamilton, it's no problem at all, and you could in theory ski and surf in the same day.
All right. Well, I've got some crazy barking dogs I got to attend to pretty quickly. One last time, tell everybody the website or social media that they should check out to hear the music.
Okay, that month, first, I strongly suggest you go to our YouTube channel. Secondly, our main socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'd love to talk to you, so feel free to drop in and say hi. And the Spotify is probably the other best place to look for us right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.